Been trying to emphasize the fact that sometimes in order to steward your sphere of influence, you've got to live against the grain. So far we've talked about the importance of being willing to live counterculturally, to live with integrity, to be willing to confront, to carry a burden from God and surrender absolutely to Him. But Daniel demonstrates for us what it means to live with conviction, a belief that steels your backbone, a belief that you're willing to die for. We can't live contrary to the culture and make a difference if we don't believe something that's worth dying for. Thank you, Barry. There has to be something in us to live for and be willing to die for. Daniel lived in captivity under Babylon. He faced pressures to blend in, to bow down, or to give up. He faced changing kings, empires, and expectations, but he remained steadfast. And you and I are called by God to stand strong in a collapsing culture. And when your convictions are rooted in God, you'll be able to do so rather than when they're rooted in your circumstances. It's one thing to respond to God when it's popular and trendy. It's another thing to do it when the world looks with anger and malice. And we need a generation that will rise up and stand for the cause of the King regardless. So I want to talk to you about having a conviction in your soul that will guide and direct your steps. And that kind of conviction starts with a resolved heart. You have to start with a resolution that you're going to serve God before the challenge comes. Because if you don't have that resolution before the challenge comes, you'll not stand when the challenge does come. In Daniel chapter 1, Daniel and his friends are brought to Babylon. They're giving pressure to conform. They're given a new diet. Why did that matter? Because in Israel, the diet of the Jews was directly related to their relationship with God. And if Babylon can change what they eat, they can change their culture. And you know that's true today? I'm not talking about what foods you eat. I'm talking about what you emotionally and intellectually consume will shape who you are. We need to be careful what we eat. Change their diet, and they will change, and change their name. Do you know the name Daniel means God is my judge? But his name is changed in Babylon to Belteshazzar, which means Bel, the god of Babylon. Bel protects his life. So they give him a name that he has to live under that not only changes his diet, but trying to change his identity. And I'm telling you this morning, I don't care what the world calls us. They can call us Bible beaters, Bible thumpers, crazy people. They can call us all kinds of names. They can call us hypocrites and false prophets. Let them say what they will. But God is my judge, and I'm going to live by that. And Bel is not my protector. God is my source, and that's where my focus will remain. Daniel would not change because they gave him a new name. He refused the diet. And do you know that compromise can always be justified? How many of you are with me this morning? Good, about a third. I'll wait for the rest of you to get on the bus. Compromise can always be justified. Think about it. Did Daniel choose to leave Israel and go to Babylon? Let me try that again. Did Daniel choose to leave Israel and go to Babylon? The answer to that is no. God sent them there. So I'm thinking if I were Daniel, I might think, God, you sent us here. I think you'd want us to be a blessing. So I'm going to eat their food. I'm going to go by their name because obviously you're in favor of this. It's your fault I'm in the mess I'm in. Anybody ever heard that from somebody? Or, you know, this is just for now. Just for now, I'll make a compromise. The other thing that I've heard people say is, Well, I need this. I deserve this. People turn to alcohol and drugs because they think they have a right under their pressure and their difficulty, that they need this help. I'm telling you, it is always easy to make an excuse to compromise and do what God's not called you to do, and to cave under the pressure. And you're looking at me like I have a third eye on my forehead, which means I'm going to preach longer. The whole idea is that if you want to compromise, the devil will give you 100 reasons. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says this in Phillips' translation. I love this verse in Phillips. Don't let the world squeeze you into its own mold, but let God remold your minds from within. And how many of you know the pressure is all around us, that the world wants to squeeze us into its mold, into its shape, get us to conform, and if we're not careful, we'll find a way to justify our doing that. But Daniel came to Babylon with a purposed heart. Listen to what Daniel chapter 1, I'm going to read a longer portion because I want you to get the whole sense. Then the king ordered the chief of his court officials to bring into the king's service some Israelites from the royal family nobility. Listen to who he looked for. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. So they're looking for the best and the brightest. And I can promise you that the devil will come alongside some of you and say, you're worth more than what you're getting now. That if you'd simply lay aside some of your convictions, you'll rise faster. I've got a place for you that will enhance your status in the community if you'll just lay aside some of your convictions, because the devil is also looking for the best and the brightest. He's looking at our teens and our young adults for the best and the brightest to lure them away. And I will tell you how disappointing it is for me to listen to some of the vilest entertainers in our world today that develop their musical skills on the platform of a church and then prostituted that gift in service to the devil. He's looking to recruit, and we need to be really careful that we help that not happen. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years. After that, they'd enter the king's service. Among those chosen from Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. Now watch. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and asked the chief officials for permission not to defile himself this way. Look for the best and the brightest, but you have to eat our food. And Daniel is saying, not doing it, because he had his mind made up before the challenge came. If you don't have your mind made up ahead of time, you will crumble under the pressure. You have to have a decision that I'm going to serve him no matter what and no matter the cost. I would call you this morning to have a made up mind. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is in Romans chapter 14, where they're disputing over which days to celebrate and where to worship, or how to worship, when to worship. And Paul says this, let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. Make up your mind who you're going to serve. It's similar to what Joshua said at the end of his life when they're about to enter into all that God had prepared for them. And he says to them, choose this day whom you will serve, either the gods of the nations around you or Jehovah God. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'm going to be a little ornery this morning, but I get worn out by people that are serving Jesus one day and backslid the next. People that are excited about God one day and can't hardly make week at the next. Would you make up your mind? Decide who you will serve. Ephesians chapter 6 says this, put on the full armor of God so that you can stand against the devil's schemes. And we emphasize all the things about the armor of God, which we should. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. This is my favorite part of that whole section. And after you've done everything to stand, stand. Stand. Stand firm, therefore. Would to God that God would raise up a people with a backbone of steel that are going to stand for right and stand up to be counted with a made-up mind no matter what comes our way. Anybody need to give their life to Jesus right now? Anybody agreeing with you? Do you hear me this morning? It starts with a purposed heart, a made-up mind. God honored Daniel's stance. Now here's where it really gets good. I believe that what we believe is superior to anything the world believes. Not ashamed, not embarrassed. It's a better way to live. Christians aren't what's wrong with the culture. Christians are what's right with the culture. What is it that we want? We want stable homes. We want godly citizens. We want people to engage the culture for the better. And Daniel is saying, God's way is better than your way, O king, and I'm going to put it to the test. Give us 30 days, and let's see if God's ways are better than the king's ways. A made-up mind isn't afraid to be put to the test. Here's my point. If our faith doesn't produce fruit better than the world system is producing, then our faith isn't genuine. Well, I feel like I am all by myself today. I believe that the most loving couples should be Christian couples. I believe that the most stable homes should be Christian homes. I believe that the best worker on the job should be the Christ follower. I believe the best citizen in the city ought to be one that names the name of Christ. And if the fruit of your life isn't superior to the fruit of the world system, then forget playing church and get some steel in your backbone that will produce something that will demonstrate that it is a better way. I'll put it to the test. Try me and see. Do I have bad days? Yes. Do I struggle? Yes. But believers behave differently and produce a better fruit. Woo, good stuff, Pastor. I'm with you. Thank you. Somebody help me this morning. At the end of this little test, they were healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. Faith-based convictions produce better fruit. That's what Jesus meant when he said, let men see your good works, that they may glorify your Father in heaven. Convictions begin with a resolved heart. Second, convictions are strengthened through daily faithfulness. In Daniel chapter 6, it says to us in verse 3 that Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to send him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators tried to find grounds against Daniel in his conduct, but they were unable to do so. Now listen to this, this is powerful. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, they said, we will never find any basis of charges against this man Daniel unless it has to do with the law of his God. We can't find anything to charge him with. So we need to make his faith illegal. Are you hearing me right now? We can't find anything to charge him with. We need to make his faith illegal. We're living in a time that preaching against sin is being defined as hate speech. We're living at a time where the world is doing everything it can to make faith irrelevant and moving toward making it illegal except inside the walls of your home. And the challenge will be that if they can't find anything else against you, they'll attack your faith. So it's a testimony when your faith is attacked. The ruling they asked for, and the king was pretty much, King Darius, I don't think was aware of what Daniel was doing, but they got a law passed that for 30 days, no one would pray except to King Darius. Why would that matter that Daniel prayed the way he prayed? Listen to what we discover in 1 Kings chapter 8. Solomon's prayer at the dedication of the temple included this exhortation, talking about people turning from God. If they turn back to you with all their heart and soul in the land of their enemies who took them captive. That's under Solomon before it happens. Who took them captive and prayed to you toward the land you gave their ancestors, toward the city you have chosen, and the temple I have built for your name. Then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and their plea and uphold their cause. So Solomon prayed, there's going to be a day come when the people will turn from God and you'll go into captivity. But God is saying, when that happens, pray toward Jerusalem. Pray. It was not just a nice thing to do. It was what God commanded they do in captivity so they not forget where they came from. Scripture doesn't say here how often to pray. And Scripture doesn't say you have to do it in an open window. Again, compromise is easy. I mean, what would have been wrong for 30 days? To just, I don't think they had basements, but what would be wrong with just praying in the basement? Or moving away from the window so that no one would see you. We desire to live our faith, I believe, authentically, as long as we can eliminate controversy. We want to do it in a way that no one challenges us or it's made acceptable. And I came across this quote, closing the window would not have changed Daniel's prayer life, but it would have changed Daniel. Closing the window would not have changed Daniel's prayer life, but it would have changed Daniel. And in this time of trial, Daniel maintained his commitment to his spiritual disciplines. When Daniel learned the decree had been published, he went upstairs to the room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God just as he had done before. Threats did not change his discipline. In fact, I believe that resolve strengthens as we maintain our spiritual disciplines. Do you know who gets worn out in their faith and gets wishy-washy? This is going to sound really churchy, but it's true. People that quit coming to church. People that quit praying on a regular basis. People that quit reading the word on a regular basis and wonder why, when they're not eating at the Lord's table, that they become weak and distracted and subject to the attacks of the enemy. So, the law of the king could not be undone. And Daniel is thrown into a den of lions. How many have heard the story of Daniel in the lion's den? I think today that would be equivalent to getting elected to public office, Adam. Thrown into the lion's den. And we have this picture, and I get why we do it. We really wouldn't want to have the scripture portrayed in an accurate fashion to our children. It might scare them. So we have these pictures of Daniel curled up alongside one of the lions, and they just become cute little house cats, and they're just calmed down, and Daniel snuggles in with them. Do I think that's what happened? Only in your fairy tale. Because the Bible doesn't say that God changed the nature of the lion. It says that the angels shut their mouth. I'm so tempted to take a rabbit trail here. I know there are times I need an angel to shut my mouth. How about you? But I think they were still growling. If you can growl with your mouth shut. I've used this before, but it's kind of how I picture it. We had for 10 years or so a mini schnauzer. Anybody ever have a mini schnauzer? Anybody share my pain? Our mini schnauzer could hear a leaf fall in China and bark at it. He would bark at everything, and I'm doing my best, and you might think this is mean, but I just needed to get his attention. So when I wanted his attention, we had a traditional schnauzer cut. I would grab him by the beard so he would have to look me in the eye, and we would have a chat. Trying to get him to not bark. And I would tell him to stop, and it was hilarious because he'd sit there and look at me, trying not to bark, but it was still in him. And he'd go, I felt horrible for a little bit, and then it was hilarious. I wish I'd videoed it. I think that's what happened to the lions. Their mouth was shut. They still stared at Daniel and thought, if I get my mouth open, I got lunch here. I think they were drooling. I think they were ready to take him, and that they paced all night long, because anybody can have faith when the threat goes away. But can you have faith when the threat is right there breathing its stinking breath down your neck? All night long, those lions paced and snarled and ready to consume him. And Daniel didn't waver at all. Chapter 6, verse 19 says, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to, he liked Daniel, but he couldn't change the law. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? And I love this. Daniel doesn't say, you moronic idiot king that threw me down here. Wait till I get out of here and I file suit against you. He said, may the king live forever. He greeted him with respect. My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in God's sight, nor have I ever done wrong before you, your majesty. Do you know why we crumble under pressure? Is because we don't really believe what Daniel just said. We don't really believe that God can save us. I don't know why it is we believe that he can get us to heaven, but he can't get us through our temporal problems. Do you really believe he can save you? Do you really believe that if you tithe, he can make up that 10%? I believe God can do more with 90% when you surrender 10 than you can do with 100. But do we really believe that? Do we believe that he can save us? Do we believe that he can protect us when we stand for our faith, that he will be there when we share our faith? Do we really believe that he can save us? And many times we don't really want to find out the answer to that. We don't really want to know the price that might bring and the threat that might accompany it. Conviction is strengthened through daily faithfulness. You know why Daniel had the courage in the lion's den? Because he prayed 3 times a day with his face toward Jerusalem. And when you keep up the discipline, you become stronger in the process. It was too late to pray when they threw him into the lion's den. But he had built a platform on which his relationship to God was steadfast. Third, convictions are sustained in spiritual warfare. We see Daniel as a young man, we see him at middle age, and when we get to Daniel chapter 10, we see him as an old man. He's in his mid-80s. For some odd reason, when I did something to my left foot, and it swelled up, and I was walking with a little more limp, and I don't know why. I don't know why that engendered several discussions about how difficult it is to grow old. But how many of you know that growing old isn't for sissies? I love the thing about growing old. They said, you know how to tell if you're getting old. If you fall down and people laugh, you're young. If you fall down and they run to your aid, you're old. And it's a stage of life where it's dangerous to go to sleep because you can wake up injured. Hello, anybody hearing me? The pillow wasn't right, and now you can't straighten your neck. Daniel's not a young man. Daniel's not middle-aged. Daniel is in his mid-80s. And God gives him a revelation because of his life. The reason we have the great eschatological revelation of the end of Daniel is because Daniel walked with God and Daniel knew God, and Daniel did not compromise while serving in the place of privilege. He gets a great revelation from God, and verse 2 of chapter 10, at that time I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips. I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. He's not some of you need to hear this. I'm talking to old people right now. I'm going to get ornery. I don't know why God still has me here. I've outlived my usefulness. If you're still here, you're still useful to him. And Daniel had more passion in his mid-80s than he had in his early 20s. Daniel was still hungry for God, still pursuing God, still hearing from God. Well, I can't do what I used to do. No kidding. But you have an opportunity to get into a place of prayer and a place of intercession and a place of ministry that you didn't have in your younger years. Are you hearing me? Quit crying about getting old and regain your passion for God. And let's do something for the King. Is anyone hearing me this morning? Daniel's as passionate as he ever was. And he fasts and prays for 21 days. And he has an experience that comes from the Lord. The Bible tells us in Daniel chapter 10, on the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river Tigris, he has this revelation of a man in linen, belt of fine gold, body like topaz, face like lightning. A hand touched me and said, Daniel, you who are highly favored, esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you. Who said that? An angel from God. Wouldn't you like God to say that about you? Highly favored and esteemed? highly favored and esteemed by God? And the angel says to him, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard. The first day you prayed, God heard you. But the prince of the Persian kingdom, spiritual warfare, resisted me for 21 days. I don't understand everything about that, but I'm telling you that what's happening on earth in your prayer and your worship and your interaction with God is creating an opposite response in the demonic realm of the devil wanting to get in the way and stop that. And there was a battle that was going on, and Daniel in his mid-80s said, I'm not stopping the battle till the answer comes. I'm going to keep seeking God and tear down strongholds and see God break through. There's some unique union between the commitment we make to pray and engage in warfare and what happens in the supernatural realm. The Bible tells us in Ephesians chapter 6, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Our battle's not with politics. Come on. Our battle's not with the government. Our battle's not with atheists. It's not with the pagans. It's not with LGBTQ. It's not with any of the agendas that are out there. We're battling wickedness in high places. And God's calling some to stand up and say, maybe I can't run with the fourth grade boys anymore. Maybe I can't play flag football, but what I can do is I can surround them with my prayers. I can lift them to God. I can believe for God's anointing to reign on them. I can fight for them in the heavenly realm, and whatever my age might be. Understand the battle in the heavenlies. So the challenge that I have for you this morning is, do you have a made-up mind? Do you have a conviction that starts with a made-up mind that is strengthened in personal disciplines and sustained in spiritual warfare? Are you in a place for that to happen? Because where it starts is purposing in your heart that you will serve him and follow him. Would you stand with me? I'd like every head bowed, every eye closed just for a moment. Every veteran in this place will tell you that you can decide whether you want to serve or not before you sign up. But when you sign up, you need a made-up mind you're going to serve. And I'm just wondering, maybe someone here this morning is wavering in your faith. Maybe the devil has told you you have no value. Maybe he's telling you that you have no place, that it's not worth it. And I'm calling you this morning to have the spirit of Daniel stand up and be counted in your 20s, in your 40s, in your 80s, that you will serve him. And if you're in that place where he's beating you around, I want this to be a moment that is strengthening for you. Would you just slip up your hand and say, I need a touch from God today? Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hold them up. He sees them all around the room. I need a touch from God. Let's make this a day that we let God put some steel in our soul. Let's worship him together.